Tina, do we sign in for the 4 o'clock meeting too?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Hey, Ms. B. Let's see. Sam, we good to go?
Yep, we're ready.
Hello, I'll call the Charlottesville August 18th, 2025 meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Oshrin? Here. Councilor Payne?
Here.
Vice Mayor Pinkston?
Here.
Councilor Snook?
Here.
Mayor Wade?
Here. Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
So moved.
Did we make that change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second. Thanks,
Okay.
Pete.
So my computer's updating, so I can't.
Oh, okay, we'll do a vote.
Yeah.
Voice
so-
vote?
Yes.
Yeah. So all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no.
Okay.
Great. So this meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first one is a work session now where we hear and discuss presentations that do not require a vote. And then we'll have a closed session, and then we'll come back for a regular meeting at 6:30. And so today we have 3 reports. The first one will be from the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau report. And Courtney will make that presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to share with you what we've been doing for the past year. I think it's been a little bit over a year since I gave you an update, so I'm excited to do that. Do want to take a minute to recognize my chair and vice chair who are in the room, and our new director of marketing and PR, and then obviously Chris Engel also sits on our board. So well supported today.
And I represent the city on
And you
the
do.
board.
Thank you so much. So at any time, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me in a presentation. I'm going to go through most of it fairly quickly, and I'll stop in a couple of different spots, but don't hesitate to stop me if you want to know a little bit more information. All right, so we passed our first strategic plan based on our tourism master plan in October of last fall. And I'm going to be sharing with you what we plan to do over the next 3 years based on our tourism master plan and the progress that we want to make. I always include the mission, vision, and values because it guides what we do. The mission comes from the operating agreement between the city and the county, so that's not something the CACVB board puts together. That's something that the city and the county jointly have tasked us with doing. We also have, we really want to model welcoming for our community. We are the official welcoming committee for the city and the county, so we take our job in welcoming very, very seriously. We also take our economic impact very seriously. We expect that we will have the updated numbers for 2024 next month. They usually come out in September from the state. So you're seeing here the most recent data that we have from 2023, almost $1 billion in direct visitor spending to Charlottesville and Albemarle combined, supporting more than 7,000 jobs. $47 million coming back in local taxes to the city and the county, and $350 million in job payroll. We always have to do some parts of our job. So it doesn't matter based on our tourism master plan, based on our strategic plan, there are things that we always have to do. We call those our critical business imperatives. We always need to generate overnight visitation. The transient occupancy tax is the sole funding source for our organization. So as that increases, so does our budget. As it decreases, so would our budget. So we are very focused on generating paid overnight stays here. We also generate a large amount of visitor spending. Visitor spending is anything that is not spent at an accommodation. So when people are going to our attractions, our stores, our restaurants, and spending money here, we're generating taxes through other means as well. And we take that responsibility very seriously too. We focus on midweek business generation because we have really healthy leisure weekend business during the spring and the fall especially. And midweek tends to be softer the entire year. So that's an area of growth for us. We generate a lot of research, such as in the Tourism Master Plan, and we share that with our industry and with our community. It's important to us that we are transparent in our governance. We know that we are spending taxpayer dollars, and we need to make sure that we are accountable for those funds. And we are the entity that promotes Charlottesville and Albemarle outside of the immediate area. So that's number 6 is our promotion. That is where we spend about half of our budget annually is through advertising, through earned media, owned media, which is through our website and social media, and paid media as well through advertising. We also engage with our partners. We call any organization, a nonprofit, a business that is in the tourism industry a partner of ours. And we define that very broadly. Anybody who could serve a visitor and a visitor would be interested in that service is part of the tourism economy. And so we want to be inclusive in who are welcoming into that and helping them develop their businesses and get access to the visitor dollar. We also provide visitor services through our mobile visitor centers primarily, which have 10 different locations throughout the city and the county weekly. Here are the Tourism Master Plan goals. So moving away from our critical business imperatives, we are here to amplify the visitor experience, foster a welcoming community, strengthen community partnerships, enhance the local quality of life, and boost sustainable economic growth. And I'll go into each of these separately as we move forward. Amplifying visitor experiences is really about promoting and enhancing the visitor experience through targeted marketing. So knowing who is coming here, who has the possibility to come here if they would receive an invitation, and making sure that we are intentional about who we're inviting here, both from a inclusivity lens, but also from the lens of who is going to come here and spend their money here, and hopefully stay for at least a night or two. So our strategic plan goals to make progress on this in the next 3 years started with year 1, which started July 1st. And right now we are developing a brand. We haven't done a rebranding process. I celebrated 6 years with the CACVB August 1st. We haven't done a rebranding since I've been here. It was done just before I arrived. And we are overdue for it. Our partners said that we needed it. Our tourism research that we conducted through the Tourism Master Plan said that we needed it. And so it's time. So we're going to start there. And then over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be getting the website up to date based on that new brand, and then really thinking about where we're going with visitor services in the future in years 3 and beyond. For each one of these parts of the strategic plan, we have these guiding questions for equity and inclusion. These are questions that we ask ourselves on how we are doing a good job representing our community. I'm not going to read through these, but you'll see this slide as we go along. So I talked about the rebrand a second ago. This summer we held 7 different community workshops where we listened to the community to see what stories they want to tell and what they want the visitors to know when they come here. We held those there were 4 in person, and you'll see in Charlottesville, Pantots, Crozet, and Esmont, as well as 3 virtually during evening, daytime, and weekend hours. This is a 6-month-long process. So it started in May, it'll end in November. We were seeking community input through press releases, several interviews on the local TV stations, the publishing of an op-ed, flyer distribution, went old school on that, and then we got an online survey with 439 responses and a lot of personal outreach from us. And what we learned from that has been really exciting, and we'll be able to share more of that with the CACVB board a week from today at our office from 1 to 3, and the public is always invited to all of our meetings. They're public. The next up, any questions about our rebranding process before I continue? Cool. The next up is...
Sorry,
Oh,
I
yeah.
might have missed you saying this. What's the timeline on that?
It is May through November, so it'll be complete the beginning of November.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll have the rollout this winter. It'll take us a little bit of time to put make our website up to date and all of that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. The next part is fostering a welcoming community. As I said earlier, it's really important to us that we are extending the welcome mat for anybody who comes to town. Very much see that as our job. And so we are, in the years 1 through 3, really helping people who have disabilities, make sure that they get access to our destination. We have had a lot of success with this so far. I'll get into that in a minute. We'll be developing an ambassador program, which extends our Tourism for All programming. If you're not aware, for the past 2 years, and we're about to enter our 3rd year, we've had a Tourism for All cohort where we bring in up to 20 partners and work with them to create better policies around attracting and retaining employees, exemplary customer service, meaningful community partnerships, and intentional promotion. And then finally, on this slide, we'll be working on the DMAP accreditation. Our organization hasn't been accredited, or at least not as far as I'm aware, by Destinations International, which is the organization that represents organizations like ours internationally. So we'll be undergoing that process, and we were referencing that process as we were creating the strategic plan so that we know that we're working towards it. So we'll be working on accessibility initiatives. A couple of years ago, we onboarded 61 of our tourism partners. We were the second in the country to do this work through Wheel the World, so we got a really good deal. This time was a lot more expensive, so we only got 7 industry partners this time, but we're happy to have them included and live on the Wheel the World's website. We have also participated in an organization called Travelability on making sure that we're hearing back from our partners on how they would like to be supported in their accessibility journey. And then we've been awarded about $10,000 from Virginia Tourism Corporation to build and market a more accessible experience, and we'll be inviting an influencer here sometime over the course of this year to experience what we have to offer and test it out. We did that a couple of years ago with Candace Welch. We learned so much from her experience, and so did our partners, so we want to continue to do that annually if we can. As I mentioned, we have an ambassador program starting. So the cohort is what I was talking about a minute ago. We've had a conference every year following the cohort. That's when we graduate the people who participated, and we get all of our tourism community together to think about the future of our destination and where we want to go. And what we've heard from our tourism industry partners is that they want to get together more frequently. We want to do a better job of letting them know what services we have to offer, and so we'll be starting an ambassador program, which is a little bit of a lighter engagement with networking and some trainings online. Did you have a question? No. Awesome. So that is fostering welcoming communities. With strengthening community partnerships, one area that we really saw is that we can be very siloed in our industries in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, and trying to get people together as part of what that ambassador program is focused on, but it's also trying to create these cross-sector partnerships so that we're able to really advance the tourism industry here. We haven't had a major attraction come here in a long time. We aren't creating massive tourism product here, and that's all right. But we have to think about ways that we are reorganizing what we have and telling people about what we have in a different way that makes it more compelling. And part of that is really through strengthening our community partnerships. One area of opportunity for us is our food and beverage partners have typically not necessarily seen themselves as part of the tourism industry. I think a couple years ago with the wine recognition, the winery started to see us as more of a tourism partner, and that's been something that's been able to grow. And we really want to bring the restaurants, food trucks, and all the other food vendors into that conversation too. So we are building our relationships with them over the course of this year with the hope that with a new brand, we'll be able to do a marketing and promotion that really helps push that narrative forward next year. We'll talk about the 250th efforts shortly. I am the committee chair for Charlottesville, Albemarle, and Scottsville for the local 250th committee. So we have been meeting as a joint committee for several years now. We're also working on building a closer relationship with the University of Virginia and the foundation as the Virginia Guest House comes online. It is going to be a bit of a disruptor to what we have here. And when they want to be really good partners with us in ensuring that it's a positive disruption for our hotel community and something that's moving us forward in the industry. And then finally, we're going to create a partner guidebook so that we can really help our partners understand what we offer them for free and get that word out better. So the mobile museum was out at Highland a couple of weeks ago. I know Mayor Wade was there, so thank you for that. So this is a picture of Carla, who's on our team, and the mobile museum in the background.
Before you
Yeah.
go on, I think we're gonna, over the next year, we're gonna try to get that on the downtown mall as well, so.
Yeah, so while they were here, the staff for the VA 250th came and checked out the downtown mall to see where it could be safely put. We weren't sure that it was going to work, but they think that it's going to. So I'm not going to guarantee it.
Right.
But fingers crossed, and I'm glad that they took the opportunity while they were in town to come downtown and scope out a site where it could possibly be. So thank you for that. We have also launched this has been an unfunded partnership locally, which is fine, but the CACVB put $10,000 towards the VA 250th and got that matched by Virginia Tourism Corporation. And what the committee asked us to support was the Seaville Puzzle Hunt that happened in March. So they made a puzzle that was around the 250th, and they've turned that into an itinerary. So we supported a sponsorship for them, and that activated the downtown mall. And then a podcast series. So we'll have 8 episodes of Founding Footprints, which is a really accessible way for people to experience local history, and not just from the Revolutionary War period, but throughout the history of this area. And I think I've probably talked enough about the food and beverage campaign, so I'm going to move forward from this. Anything on either of those before I move on? Cool. Fourth is enhancing the local quality of life. Obviously, we want tourism to be something that really gives back to our community, that's enhancing our economy, and that those dollars that are coming in are really helping to pay for the services and make businesses succeed here. And so the first part of that has been to develop a crisis communications plan in coordination with the city and the county. The city hosted a conversation about that last winter, and we were able to participate in that, and I'm excited to see where we move forward with that conversation. We'll also be spending some time on our outdoor recreation assets. People come here for the Blue Ridge Parkway, they come here for Shenandoah National Park. They don't always understand what we have here locally for them to explore, and so trying to get those people who are coming here for those major assets to understand the connectivity of the outdoor recreation space inside the city and the county is something that we really want to foster. And then crafting a destination stewardship plan simultaneous to that is also really important. We don't want visitation to be something that degrades the environment that we have here. The other thing, so I said it was in coordination with everybody, that's fine. The last piece is boosting sustainable economic growth. This is, after all, what we are trying to do here so that we can make sure that we're generating tax revenue that can go back to the city and the county so you all can pay for essential services. And also, as I said, supporting the businesses to thrive here. I mentioned midweek business earlier. We have known that that's a weak area for us, but we haven't fully studied that. And since I got here 6 months before COVID, didn't really have a great opportunity to do that until recently. And so we have been taking this year to do some more of that studying, and we'll talk about that in a minute, with the possibility of leading to a conference center feasibility study. One was done in 2018 before I came here, and then when the foundation announced the Virginia Guest House and that they were going to build a conference center, it no longer seemed like something that they wanted to pursue at the time. And so we have been waiting for the Virginia Guest House to open to see how that affects the local hotel supply and what demand is generated from that before we continue the conversation. So we're trying to put the pieces in place in the meantime to see what that looks like. As that opens, we have been working on workforce with a handful of folks. I'll talk about that in a minute, and the Downtown Mall's 50th anniversary. I am sure you're all aware that the 50th anniversary of the pedestrian downtown mall is because it was put into place for the bicentennial, so it's very much related to the history of the 250th. So we are working towards having a dashboard with daily accommodations data. So that is occupancy, average daily rate, revenue per available room. I believe I have those charts later on to show you what that looks like. We have been receiving daily data from Virginia Tourism Corporation, but didn't have a great way of putting that into a visual because it's so much data. It's not something that we can map easily in an Excel spreadsheet. So we have a data science intern who just graduated, who's been working for us this summer on putting that information into a dashboard so that we're able to maintain that information and track it over time. We have also been just started a relationship with AirDNA for short-term rental data that we've shared with the city and with the county staff to make sure that the information that you all have is the same information that we're seeing and make assumptions based on that. And I have a chart on that in a moment. Really assessing how our sales our efforts are working. So we go to trade shows and we try and generate business during the week and seeing which sectors are working and which sectors aren't working in that space for those trade shows and continuing to adjust our strategy there. Our CVent is a solution that meeting planners use. It's a website that you can log on to and you can do requests for proposals through that system and put that out to whatever hotels or cities or counties you want. And people can bid on your business. We've always had a CVent, we've always had access to CVent, but we're paying for greater visibility now, and we've seen a major uptick in midweek business, which is great. For the Downtown Mall's 50th, I attended a meeting with city staff this spring. I understand that you all are planning a 3-day downtown mall celebration from July 3rd through 5th this following summer. We're going to really support that with mobile visitor center efforts and promotional efforts. And as we find out more and how we can help tell stories that you all want to tell, we'll continue to augment that through our channels and really aligning those efforts through visibility through the VA 250th at the state level. Here are the hotel occupancy rates. So as you can see, now that 2020 is off this chart, things have mostly normalized in occupancy rates, but we are not as high as we have been in the past. And in part, that is due to the average daily rate continuing to climb as expenses continue to climb for our accommodations partners. And that's something that we need to keep an eye on. We're seeing a lot more seasonality than we did coming out of COVID, so that's also something that we need to watch and adjust to. And then the real number that we want to make sure is growing is the revenue per available room, because that's the money that our hotels are making off of the rooms. Yes?
Courtney, could I ask you, looking at this graph, you mentioned the seasonality. Was that seasonality typical before COVID?
It was, yeah.
So that's not a change.
It's not a change. I think sometimes it can be more extreme, and what we try to do is have it be, we really focus on the off season for advertising to
Sure.
try and raise that, because a weekend in October is going to be full most of the time, which is awesome.
Not a problem there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
but great question, yeah. This is our some of the data from AirDNA on how many short-term rentals we have in the hotel market here, or in the market here. In 2024, the short-term rental inventory counted for 14%. So what we did was I had a theory that the short-term rentals come on market when we have U of A football games and other high demand times, and then a lot of them go away. And that does seem to be what's happening, is that they open up, people leave town, they put their house up for short-term rentals, and they take it back down
I'm curious.
during those times. Yeah.
I'm curious if you've seen, like, are people who come to Charlottesville and choose to stay in an Airbnb, are they different from the type of person who's coming to Charlottesville and choosing to stay in a hotel? Like, are they really one-to-one, or are they kind of seeking out a different experience?
I think they're seeking out a different experience. I don't have research to back it up, other than observational research, but we're seeing families stay in short-term rentals because it's easier. We see like a bachelorette party staying in a short-term rental so that they all can be together instead of in a hotel, and maybe doing some cost savings that way. But if that was something that you all wanted to know more information about, we would need to do some research on it.
Because likewise, that's my impression generally, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just interesting if, building new hotels would necessarily ease Airbnb pressure if it's a different product, but
Yeah.
bigger question, sorry.
No, that's fine. I appreciate big questions, and more things to find out for sure. But yes, they're not necessarily an even swap. If you build more hotels and the short-term rental demand goes away. And then these are some of the findings from our data science intern. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll be quick here, which is really reinforcing what we already knew, which is our weekend business is doing better than the midweek business, which is why we're focused there. It's been interesting to find that Thursday and Saturday are about even, and so we need to do a little bit more work there to discover why and try and get more people to spend that night on Saturday and not just Friday night. And this just kind of reinforces that. So I will stop here. Any other questions for me?
No, thank you.
Yep. Any questions or comments?
Or go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate the report. Thank you. Could you say a little more about what's going on with Virginia 250th? There's something at the state level, I guess, that we're connecting with?
Yeah, there's something at the national level. So America's 250th, and then Virginia 250th, there's a commission that has been established at the state level. And they have a minimal staff, they have an executive director, and I think most of the rest of the staff are connected to the mobile museum. There's also a mobile display that is going around that would be something more that like the library could host. It's something smaller. And it's somewhat related to tourism in that, it might attract visitation, but it's going to be the same, mobile museum throughout the Commonwealth. So I think the bigger draw is for the local audience, especially school groups. So trying to get the mobile museum back during the school year would be really helpful because we don't know how many students may have seen it at the county fair. They have also supported grants, so we have helped our tourism partners. I know that the number for partner support for through Virginia Tourism that we've helped with over the past year is about $200,000, and I'd have to look the exact number for how many of those were 250th grants. But it's probably been at least $50,000 worth of financial benefit to run programs for the 250th here, in addition to creating some brochures and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael, did you?
Yeah, thank you, and my question probably won't shock you. But obviously through the agreement, we spend about, Charlottesville, about $1.3 million to the CACVB in not the biggest amount of money of anything, but I mean, it's a meaningful amount, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because I think every investment we make should have like cost-benefit analysis, but I mean, what is the metrics for, you said about half the budget is marketing. What are the measurements of trying to evaluate like cost-benefit analysis, or is it the biggest bang for the buck, or would there be more bang for the buck if like investment went to creating a new community event, something like Richmond's Watermelon Festival, or expanding an existing event like the Film Festival or Havana River Festival? Would one of those things, actually draw in more tourists?
So because of the hotel inventory that we have here, a lot of our major events sell out the hotels that we have. So to put a whole lot more money towards an event during a peak time wouldn't generate any additional tax revenue here outside of what we'd spend. So if our hotels are already full, like on an October weekend, maybe when the Virginia Film Festival is happening, for us to spend more money from a visitor standpoint to try and generate overnight visitation, if we're maxed out, there's no room to grow, right? And so really having an organization keep track of where we're succeeding and where we need work and how we can bring our businesses and our nonprofits and our community into that conversation so people can benefit from the visitor dollar, it brings an incredible amount of value. I would say that we there are organizations like ours that spend 70% on advertising only. We have a larger staff because we're trying to bring more people in to the conversation. We're trying to support more sectors of the economy. And we're really intentional about how we do that. And I think that is a huge amount of value. Metrics we have a ton of metrics. So depending on what metrics you want to see, we can probably grab a lot of those for you. And then some of those metrics cost money, and that's something that we've talked about with the CACVB board. We used to pay about $20,000 to track how effective our advertisements were in generating overnight visitation here, and it only was able to track about 10% of what we were able to produce. And so trying to weigh those pros and cons of how much money do we spend on tracking versus how much money we spend on trying to make it happen is something that we take into consideration with the CACVB board.
But it sounds like maybe there's opportunities for like new community events that could draw people here off season, or maybe try to tap into that market. Like a very random example, but like Richmond's Watermelon Festival, I think brings in like day trip people, not overnight, but a lot of people come in from surrounding counties. Maybe there's opportunities there. No, I hear it. I'm just like nothing about CACV specifically. I'm just often very skeptical about how much social media advertising like works and how much like the view metrics translate into like people coming here versus, the inherent events or amenities that are the primary draw here. But anyway, sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add in that I know we had some extra money during COVID, some COVID, and we did some very targeted. When I said we, the tourism bureau, got to change the name, but anyways. And we did some very targeted, and with individuals, groups during the week, and I know that we saw some impacts from that, and comparing us, and I see John over there, that we often compare ourselves with Asheville, where you come, and they're much larger, but they have a much more impact. People have to know we're here, and a great selling point, but a lot, some groups don't know we're here. But So I know we have to get going. Were you finished,
I'm
Michael?
done.
Okay, Natalie, then I'll come back down.
I just had a small question about if we keep track of how people are getting here. I know obviously we can pull numbers from the airport, but something that I tell my clients when I talk to them is I try and emphasize, like, we have a train. And so, especially because it comes right downtown, you know, like the Richmond South Streets or whatever that one's called, that's like kind of in the middle of nowhere. The station in Charleston is like way up River Road. It's like kind of not pleasant, but ours happens to be right downtown, which is great. You're within walking distance of the hotels and of the university. And I know Virginia is driving Amtrak numbers on the East Coast, which is great, and they're expanding all the way down to Blacksburg, which is great. So I'm just wondering if we're able, do we know if we get tourism from train travel versus is it just students coming back for school, or how are we able to
We don't have that
discern
level of data, but we have a building relationship with Amtrak for about the first half of the time I was here. It was really hard to get a human to engage with us from Amtrak, but we have been working on that relationship, and we've hosted a couple of influencers via Amtrak. Amtrak is a huge selling point, especially to the European market. So when I would talk to European tour operators, they would say, oh, we can just go there from DC and just be in Charlottesville. We can just roll our bag right to a hotel and just get around, and it's amazing. And the location of it is ideal for sure. But I can get back to you to see if we can find a little bit more data on what might be a transient, somebody who's coming back and forth as in a student or who's a visitor, and see if Amtrak has that information.
Or do we advertise especially like, hey, we've got trains, like, do we let people know that it's easy and convenient?
We do. That doesn't mean we couldn't do more, but we do. And I think as Amtrak has been building up their advertising portfolio a little bit more, our team is also working on the interior of the Amtrak station to make it more welcoming and friendly, and the content on their website as well. And they aren't doing that in a lot of places, so I'm really excited to see if we can really start to move the needle on that a little bit more.
Cool, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The first question I had was, a couple of years ago, there was a significant effort to market Charlottesville specifically to African Americans, and it seemed to have worked very well. Has that experiment been repeated?
We continue with our Discover Black Seaville work. It is part of the suite of the things that we do. We when we had ARPA funding, we were able to work with an agency, Charette Agency, which is actually the same agency that has won our business for the rebrand, to do an action plan for Discover Black Seaville to see how we can keep moving the needle forward. It is a committee made up of volunteers, and it's pretty obvious that this can't be the face of Discover Black Seaville, and so it sometimes is a little bit slower going because it's made up of volunteers, but those efforts continue, and we still have social media channels for that as well.
And the other question I had was, you're the Convention and Visitors Bureau. How much new convention business are we able to attract?
Not a lot. A lot of organizations like ours have gone to more of a Visit Charlottesville model on how they talk about themselves, because Convention and Visitors Bureau, well, doesn't roll off the tongue, and it also doesn't necessarily reflect what we have here. And because the Convention and Visitors Bureaus were set up to support convention centers, but then there's one of us in every community in the United States now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. You have any more? Thank you guys so much. See you
Thank you,
Monday.
Percy.
We have a meeting next Monday. So see you at 1. So thank you. The next presentation is the David with the library. How you doing, sir?
Good, how are you all?
Great.
Good afternoon, counselors.
Good
My
afternoon.
name is...
Thanks,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Take care.
My name...
Take care, Miss B.
Sorry, Dave.
No problem. My name is David Plunkett. I'm the director of JMRL, and I'm joined here today by Meredith Cole, one of the council-appointed city representatives to the Jefferson-Madison Regional Library Board. You all also have representing you there Ann Hemingway and Siri Russell. Meredith and I have been JMRL users for our entire lives. The other two trustees are power users, and they're looking out for the interests of Charlottesville and the library board. The library board manages JMRL in Charlottesville, Albemarle, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson counties. It's 8 branches and bookmobile service. So in Charlottesville, you've got 3 branches in the urban area. There are 2 more branches in rural Albemarle. Well, Crozet is not exactly rural, but it used to be rural. 1 each in Nelson, Louisa, and Greene, and bookmobile service in Charlottesville, Albemarle, Louisa, and Nelson. So I'm here today to briefly talk about where JMRL has been, where we are today, and where we are going. If this does what I want. Okay. Very grainy picture of JMRL's mission and values here. So this guides all of the strategic thinking at JMRL and our service models as well. The mission of the library is to foster personal growth and lifelong learning for all by connecting people with ideas, information, and each other. And the values are we serve our community, we provide free, equitable, open access to information, we inspire lifelong learning, and we cultivate a welcoming environment for community engagement. So everything you hear today should be driven by those. So where JMRL has been, a little bit history lesson about library service in Charlottesville. Charlottesville's first public library opened in 1921 in the newly constructed McIntyre Building in downtown Charlottesville. I say public because, of course, it was a segregated facility that was not open for black families for the first several decades of library service in Charlottesville. In 1934, the 4th Street branch was opened as a segregated facility inside the Jefferson School. This was closed 14 years later when the downtown library was integrated thanks to the advocacy of Reverend Benjamin Bunn. Bookmobile service started a few years later in 1948 as the first cooperative library service between Charlottesville and Albemarle. Prior to that, it was all library service in Charlottesville. The Scottsville branch, Crozet branch, and Gordon Avenue branches all opened in the 60s. JMRL formed in the 70s when the state incentivized cooperation. It told jurisdictions to get together and we will provide more funding to share library resources. Louisa, Greene, and Nelson opened branch libraries shortly thereafter. In more recent years, the Northside Library opened in the 90s, moved to a new location in 2015. Gordon Avenue had a renovation in the children's room a few years ago in 2018. They also added drive-up service in 23. So in 2021, JMRL spent a year looking at kind of the history of library service and how to tell that story while being honest about the first 20 years of a segregated library system. We worked with Lorenzo Dickerson. There's a link in the slides here to view his film that he made about library service in Charlottesville. It's available on YouTube. So Charlottesville was the home for JMRL for the first 40 years, and JMRL was born out of the city. We maintain those close bonds today and rely on the city for support and funding and many, many other ways that I'll get into. I include this slide because library staff joke that I'm probably in this picture and that I'm there with the other relics like the card catalog and the bell bottoms. But more than anything, it's just to show the cramped headquarters there where children's services were provided in the basement of the McIntyre Building where we were 50 years ago and where we are today with 8 libraries serving the entire region. This is the Central Library, which you're all familiar with. The library moved from the McIntyre Building on 2nd Street to the old Federal Building and Post Office in the 80s. That was the last major renovation to the Central Library. It's also the administrative headquarters for JMRL. So every day there are trucks coming in and out of there that bring in some of the 40,000 plus new materials that go around the region throughout the year. It was a post office and a federal building, and probably most of you are familiar with the courtroom upstairs, which is the Swanson Case Courtroom after the Gregory Swanson case, where Mr. Swanson sued UVA to be the first African American admitted to the school, and he was represented in that case in that building by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, including Thurgood Marshall, Oliver Hill, and Spotswood Robinson. That was actually 75 years ago next month, so you're all invited on September 5th to a commemoration of that event in the afternoon. We've got some speakers in the courtroom to talk about the importance of that case. We're going to talk about the Central Library quite a bit over the next few years. I think I've got one slide later to discuss it. I included this particular slide because I was unaware until about 10 years ago that the portico on the front of the building was picked up and moved. There was an original building that was on the corner of 2nd and Market, and that was built in 1906, 1907. And then the part that reaches 3rd Street wasn't added until the 30s. So a third of the building is 20 years younger than the rest of it. At that time, they picked up that portico and recentered it. So whenever somebody talks to me about how difficult this project is going to be, I said, well, look, you can move the portico.
Yeah.
We can do anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what year was that?
That the portico moved 1936, 37.
I wasn't there.
Of course, the Gordon Avenue Library is also co-owned by the City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, as the Central Library is. It was built in 1966. It was the first library in the region that was opened as a desegregated facility. So when it opened in 66, it was the first library that was designed for all families in Charlottesville to use. The city coordinated and co-funded a major renovation of the children's room in 2018. So if you haven't been in for a long time, go take a look. It's lovely and inviting. The holds lockers right here were added during COVID. So we had a share of ARPA funding from the state library, and our friends at the library supported these 24-hour mobile lockers, so you can place something on hold and go pick it up after the hours that the branch is open. That was added in 2021, and then in 2024, the library system added drive-up service at Gordon Avenue too. So a lot's been happening there in the last few years. Of course, the Northside Library is the busiest library at the regional library system by far. It's located at the corner of 29 and Ryle Road. It is an Albemarle County-owned building solely. But about 20% of the usage comes from Charlottesville residents there. So the city, as part of JMRL, pays for part of the use of this building.
You may have mentioned this, but what's the percentage of the downtown library, generally speaking, of,
Between Charlottesville residents and Albemarle residents,
and Louisa or whatever, just
roughly between Charlottesville and Albemarle, it's about 50-50.
Okay.
The last piece that serves the city of Charlottesville is the bookmobile. So here was the original bookmobile, I think. You can tell by the name McIntyre Public Library. The library system was the Charlottesville Library, then the Charlottesville Albemarle Library, then the McIntyre Library for a few years, then JMRL. This was probably in the early 50s. It served Albemarle County. It's one of the oldest continuous operating bookmobiles in the country, actually, but now it's a much more friendly looking, colorful vehicle. A lot of library systems, public library systems, have moved away from bookmobile service in the last 10 years or so, but JMRL has gone the other way and leaned into it, especially during COVID, really seeing it as a way to bring library services to places that they wouldn't otherwise be, or where people have transportation issues getting to the library. So there are scheduled stops. It's located on our website. You can see throughout the city and Albemarle County, and then on Fridays in Louisa and Nelson counties. Go ahead.
Why have people been moving away from it?
I think that it was a way to cut expenses in the
Okay.
early aughts, basically, into the early teens.
So not like a systemic efficiency thing, just a,
And I think it was low-hanging
Low-hanging
fruit when
fruit
budget
thing. Got
decisions got tough around
okay,
the
but it's still
budget
useful, people still.
decisions. Oh, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still, I think it's a core service. So
Okay.
to me, I believe, I can't speak for our library board, but I think our library board also agrees that it's a core part of what we're doing now, and that if we were in a situation where we had to talk about a reduction of services, it would no longer be
The low-hanging fruit.
the low-hanging fruit.
Okay, great, thank you.
So it has a scheduled route that it takes throughout the week, and then also attends community events. There, just at the West Haven Day and back to school nights, Evo Sabrosa, things like that. Okay, so where are we today? That's kind of where JMRL has been. Here's some data and performance measures. JMRL's geographic footprint's about the same size as the state of Delaware. I got fact-checked on this in the worst way a few years ago. I used to always say it's bigger than the state of Delaware. Well, it turns out that it's bigger than the landmass of the state of Delaware, but there are some pesky lakes in there, so now we say about the same size as the state of Delaware. There is a truck that drives the whole route 6 days a week, basically, in order to get library materials across the region. There are about 93,000 card holders at the end of last year at JMRL. About 20,000 of those are from Charlottesville. Almost 500,000 physical volumes. Checked out about 1.9 million items last fiscal year. It's about a quarter of that came from Charlottesville residents. 600,000 of the total were digital checkouts. Almost 500,000 visitors in fiscal year 25 at the Charlottesville area branches, 750,000 overall.
What is a digital checkout?
It's an ebook that you can check out using library services. The most popular version is an app called Libby. You put in your library card number, you check out a book, it gets sent to your Kindle.
It also is audiobooks too.
And audiobooks, thank you.
And then it goes
I'm a big
away
fan.
after 2 weeks or something?
It disappears automatically, yes, no late fines.
But you can renew it as long
If
as it's
nobody's
available.
waiting for it.
And it's kind of like the old timey Netflix where you have a queue and you can get the next one as they're available. I'm a big.
I can't believe you just said old-timey Netflix.
Remember that? You know when
Yes.
you get the DVDs sent
Yes.
to you? Yeah. Anyway, I'm a Libby super user, so
Yeah,
I'm
great,
a
me
big
too.
fan.
I love it.
Yeah.
Big fan. So even though a large portion of usage was digital, it didn't impact the visits coming in to the library. As you can see there, almost 750,000 people overall coming into JMRL branches. Those 50,000 computer sessions, that's somebody coming in to use a public use computer at the library, 35,000 of those from Charlottesville area branches, so the majority of those coming from Central, Gordon, or Northside. Over 3,000 programs with over 100,000 people attending, 1,789 of those with 63,000 people at Charlottesville area branches, so the bulk of those are in the Charlottesville area.
Any way of knowing whether the computer sessions are the same 5,000 people over and over and over, or whether it's, I mean, how many unique individuals are?
Yeah, that's a great question. We might be able to dig that out. It's not something, these are numbers that we have to report to the state as part of a data collection project annually, and I don't think they asked that specific question, but I think we probably have the data on that to dig out.
Just curious.
Me too, now that you mention it. Almost 60,000 Wi-Fi users, with most of those at the Charlottesville area libraries. I mentioned the Holds locker, 3,100 of those items were checked out from that locker. The Gordon Drive Up had 7,800 people come through in their cars to pick up materials, but that's not even close to the Northside Library, 57,000 checkouts there. JMRL was the Virginia Library Association's 2022 Library of the Year, and the JMRL Friends of the Library, the 2023 Friends of the Library of the Year. So we took a year off last year from winning awards from our friends of the Virginia Library Association. So that's a lot of data there, a lot of information, but basically we're going to get into some services that JMRL offers, and our brand is books. What we do is connect people with books, but our real business is people, right?
So, David, just curious, I know that we love our books in this community. Another bookstore just opened up, and it sounds like we use the library a lot as well. But what do you think allows us to win that, it's a Library of the Year? Is it a particular service, or just the amount of the volume? Do you have any idea?
I think it's really a story that gets told to the selection committee, basically. So in 2022, JMRL's story was about the year-long commemoration we did of 100 years of library service here. So it included submitting Lorenzo's film. It included the display that's up on the third floor of the Central Library to talk about the history of library service. So it was more based on, it was not a strictly metrics thing. It was based on the work that the library system was doing at that time to meet the needs of the community, basically. So a smart person once told me to replace books, the word books, with the word information when I'm thinking about the modern public library. So instead of providing books to everybody, we're providing information or connecting them with information. Books are still the #1 way that we do that, but there are a lot of other ways to do that. So I mentioned the circulation numbers. So this is back to 1990 up to 2025. So the 1.9 million for the last fiscal year is the second most ever by a hair behind 2002. And the reason for that is that in 2002, the library system had a barcode on every single cassette or CD that was in a book on tape or book on CD set. So if you checked out a Ken Follett book or a Harry Potter book, it counted as 20 checkouts. So in 2003, that practice stopped. And last year's was the culmination of a big push up. But of course, we didn't have digital books in 2002, so I can't be too mad. Okay. Programs and attendance. The red is attendance, the blue is programs. I just include this. The numbers of programs are on the left, the numbers of attendees on the right, to show that the library program brings people whenever we have a program, people come. So you can see the big COVID dip there at the end of 20. It took a while for people to start coming back to library programming, but we're offering more programming now than we were 10 years ago, and more people are attending. In fact, our summer reading program this year had a 150% increase in terms of signups over last year. So it was the most successful one we've ever had. Also, the same page community reading program with the Festival of the Book, Poem in Your Pocket Day, those big scale events are really drawing people in to use the library. So the monthly reports are all up at jmrl.org/board of trustees. These are supposed to come in one at a time, but you get them all at once, I think. It includes information about how many books are at each location, what the checkout numbers are for each jurisdiction versus each location, what the budget for the year is, what the current expenditures for the year are. So it's very detailed and very thorough. The library system tries to be as transparent as possible and be accountable to our taxpayers for the use of those funds. The city code actually requires a report from the librarian, which is me, to the city manager by the 10th of every month, highlighting the activities of the library system. So here it is for Mr. Sanders and for everybody else to find. There is still a holding cell at the Central Library that was used for the courthouse there. So if you don't see these updated by the 10th of every month, I will turn myself into the holding cell. All right. Library resources and services. This is a lot. I will go through these pretty quickly, but I just want to illustrate the point that yes, the library is providing books to our community, and that's the number one thing that we do, and we're more well used than many other libraries throughout the country. But that's not the only reason that people come to the library, and it might not even be the most crucial for some users depending on what their needs are. So books, other informational resources are available. Other media, as we mentioned, Mr. Snook, the physical and digital books and e-books. Online databases that are free for use in the library or at home for research. The car repair, remember the Chilton's manual? That's now online. You can use it with your library card number at home. Foreign language learning, local newspapers. JMRL gets daily access to the daily progress in PDF format that you can check out with your library card to see. Business information, genealogical research, consumer reports. Digitization support in the lab on the mezzanine of the Central Library. There's equipment for turning your old slides into digital content, or cassettes or VHS tapes. We check out health literacy kits. We've got book club kits for your whole book club to get together and read the same book. A toy library for families that want to have a rotating group of toys and sensory experiences for their kids. Reader's advisory, STEM materials and programming, early literacy programming, lifelong learning, teen programming. Digital inclusion support and programming. Specifically here, I was thinking of Wi-Fi hotspots that you can check out from the library. If you're in an area that does not have connectivity, you can bring them home. It depends on line of sight. So when you get out of Charlottesville, they don't work as well the farther into the woods that you get, but they do offer some connectivity for families that don't have high-speed internet at home. Digital navigation and support, workforce development and support. Every day somebody comes into the library saying, I need help. I need to have an email address in order to get a job application in, and our library staff can help them or get them started and then refer them to the job center, either at the City of Charlottesville or the Workforce Center. Public computer use I mentioned, printing and fax services, public Wi-Fi, public meeting rooms, Privacy Pod conference spaces. These were grant funded with ARPA funding from the state. They look like phone booths basically, but they're very small, either for single use or for two people to sit in and hold just a conference or do some sort of, if you have a Zoom meeting and you need a quiet place to do it. Notary service, free interlibrary loan with UVA. That started during COVID. We charged $3 to borrow a book from outside of JMRL, but worked with the university librarian at that time to arrange for their materials to be available for our community, and that has continued. A seed library at Gordon Avenue, the African American Collection and Jazz Collection at Gordon Avenue. They have sensory support kits there, so they have tools for families that are bringing in kids that are overwhelmed by sensory experiences, maybe on the autism spectrum. It would include headphones or sensory things for them to use to acclimate them to the vibrant space they're going into. Almost done with the services. Blood pressure monitoring stations, 1,000 books before kindergarten challenge, 100 books before graduation, a whole library of things. You can check out STEM kits, Wi-Fi hotspots I mentioned, a bread making kit, Foods of the World I love. It's got different spices and cookbooks from a region, so it might be Foods of Afghanistan. It will have some cookbooks and spices and materials, and then you use some and you bring it back in and the library staff will replenish it. A ukulele, apparently, I just recently learned, gets checked out. If you're interested in learning
For
how to
use
use one.
outside of the library.
Yeah, please take it out of the library. Virginia State Park Passes for free access to the parks. Makerspace and Digital Media Lab at the Central Library. Cooling and warming centers and other kind of social fabric resources that are very important these days. streaming media with Canopy, so that's more similar to New School Netflix, where you can log in with your library card and watch films or educational programming. Ask a Librarian chat, passes to the Discovery Museum, online homework help. It kind of goes on and on and on. Streaming music, we're working on a product now that's available for, it's harder and harder to get CDs. We still have a lot of users that want CDs because they're driving a car with a CD player and they don't necessarily have connectivity, but we're going to eventually have to find something to replace that if we want to keep circulating music, which we do. Okay, so meeting people where they are, or in my brain this is called what we learned from COVID. I mentioned some of these already. Ways to connect to our community that maybe you can't get into a building at all times or when we're open. We've got Holtz pick-up lockers, bookmobile services, digital resources, the drive-up windows. We also started implementing a staff cross-training during COVID because to protect our own staff, we wanted to make sure we had enough redundancy where if somebody was sick and couldn't be in, we could send people around more fluidly than we had been able to before. Outreach events. Starting July 1 this year, we now have automatic renewals for physical materials. So if you check out a book and there's nobody waiting for it and it's not one of our Lucky Day bestseller collections, it will renew automatically twice. You'll get a notice saying it's due, but we're going to renew it for you, and it will renew for 3 weeks so you don't accumulate late fines there. And the maker resources that I mentioned earlier. In 2023, the Surgeon General released a report warning of an epidemic of loneliness. I talked about the real problem that people in America were having connecting with each other, and I really see the library as being, not just JMRL, but all public libraries as being one of the answers to that, as a community space where people can get together, share ideas, commune, and really treat each other on an equal footing. As I mentioned, summer participation was up 150% this year, and that included the largest group of adults that had ever participated in our summer reading program. So we're really reaching out to try to make sure everybody's aware of all the resources that are available at the library. Just a few samples of feedback we've gotten in the last year or so. The library is pretty much a cool place, great for people of all ages. I was able to read 100 books, fantastic pillar of Charlottesville society, numerous resources. This picture here is actually of the summer reading tote bag that we gave away. If you signed up for summer reading, you got a tote bag, and the idea was to color it a different color. Every week we had different colors available on each library. You'd sign up and then color your tote bag. You're so helpful. I love this library. Awesome library for resources, books, kids, adults. Thank you so much for taking the time to help me preserve my grandma's voice. Can't wait to put it all together and make my family cry. That's the digitization I mentioned. Somebody brought in materials and had them converted into a digital format. I live on my own. Central Library is my closest public library. I use the Central Branch Public Library as my third space. Being there helps alleviate my feelings of aloneness. Being there helps give me a sense of being in community with others. When they interest me, I attend to Central Library events. Thank you for what they do. And the last one is grateful to JMRL that partners with Meals on Wheels to bring books and materials to folks that are homebound and can't get out. So Charlottesville shares some of the financial burden for JMRL, although I consider it a privilege. I'm sure you feel the same. Here's what the Charlottesville tax dollars pay for. Branch and staff salaries. It's split with Albemarle for the branches in the urban ring, and that's split along usage. You know how many are used. It's a 3-year rolling period for how much usage comes from Charlottesville, how much from Albemarle. Facilities, the city co-owns Gordon Avenue and Central with Albemarle County. A share of regional costs based on circulation, so that's shared amongst all 5 of the jurisdictions that make up JMRL. That includes like administrative costs, so my salary, technical services, those are the folks that are ordering, processing, cataloging materials, and a share of the regional reference services. And per JMRL's regional agreement, the library contracts with Charlottesville to pay 2% of our operating budget for some high-level IT support, so networking support from City of Charlottesville IT, HR support from the HR department, and then the City of Charlottesville is the fiscal agent for JMRL. It's a great deal, and it's a great example of cooperation amongst the regional partners. So what's not paid for by Charlottesville tax dollars, local tax dollars, are books and materials. So the state aid that I mentioned, the incentivization that the state gave for jurisdictions to cooperate and share library resources, JMRL gets either the top or the second most in the state. We are constantly jumping above or below Central Rappahannock around Fredericksburg, depending on population shifts. So last year, or this current year, it's 1.1 million about, and we almost entirely that budget goes to books and materials. Some of it this year is going towards salary support, and we might have to carve out some of it for equipment moving forward. I mentioned equipment here, including IT hardware that has been paid for by fines and fees entirely for 50 years at JMRL. Most libraries around us are no longer charging late fees. Our library board is talking about it and looking at it. The American Library Association finds late fees to be a punitive and non-equitable means to try to get materials back, and they don't think it works. So our library board's been talking about it, but somewhere we have to pay for IT hardware. So that's a discussion happening right now. The other issue is, as Mr. Snook figured out, the digital materials don't have late fees. They are coming back automatically. So over time, that pot is going to get smaller. Programming at JMRL is entirely paid for by JMRL's Friends of the Library, including the Friends of the Library Endowment at the CACF. They've allowed JMRL to do things that the library system never would have been able to do. They paid for some of those holds lockers, special maker equipment that I've mentioned, specialized furniture, new teen area at the Gordon Avenue Library. That's entirely supported by our friends at the Friends of the Library. We have a book sale coming up in October if you haven't already been this year. I just learned that this is called a Sankey chart. I think Mr. or Mrs. Sankey did a wonderful job, but it takes some explaining. It's kind of money coming in and money going out. You see the total at the bottom. This is JMRL's entire fiscal year 26 budget, $11.3 million coming in, $11.3 million going out. At the top there, you can see the jurisdictional funding, which is Charlottesville's share, and then Albemarle's, Green's, Louise's, and Nelson's accounts for about $9.6 million of that. The rest is largely state aid, $1.1 million from state aid, and then about $500,000 from other sources. And if you look on the right-hand side at the green there, you can see the majority of those costs go to salaries and benefits for library staff, about $2 million in operational costs for 8 branches, and a bookmobile is not too bad. So people asked me a lot when the Institute for Museum and Library Services was shuttered this spring what the impact was going to be locally on their library. That was the federal organization that provided funding for libraries across the country. JMRL did not get any direct money from IMLS. The State Library of Virginia got quite a bit and supported local public libraries in a lot of ways, including a lot of those databases that I mentioned. We might be looking at those going away, or JMRL having to make choices about how to support those locally. And then the staff that was there that would help in our training of new staff and kind of board preparation, things like that. Okay, when I mentioned the state funding there, I have one caveat. It's about 96% funded now, that $1.1 million. There's a formula in state code that says if you have this many square acres and this many people and this many jurisdictions, then you get this amount of money. 96% funded, which is great. It hasn't been fully funded since 2001, and that's the only year it's been fully funded. So this has not been the most stable source of revenue for JMRL over the last 20 years. It's been predictable, but it hasn't been where it's supposed to be. We've made great strides in the last 5 years statewide. It was only about 60% funded about 5 years ago. So to get from 60% to 96% is great, but there's still advocacy that needs to be done there for state support. And this is where JMRL is going. This is the strategic plan that began this year using the 4 core values of JMRL, making up some goals there and strategies. So I won't read it all to you, but I encourage you to go to jmrl.org/future. This is the very broad strokes library board level. Here's what we want to happen in our communities. And there's also a document that's an implementation plan that goes along with this that states how myself and my staff are going to implement that for the library board. We're also thinking about expected challenges and opportunities in the next few years. Same things that a lot of people are thinking about. Of course, the funding concerns that I just mentioned. As the pie gets smaller for local government, for state government, you all and our other jurisdictional partners are going to have to make tough choices. So the library board is going to have to work with you all to figure out how to do that moving forward. Of course, everybody's concerned about AI and what that's going to mean for any industry, and libraries are not immune from that. I kind of look at it as I said, it's the library's job to connect people to each other and to information. We're going to get the questions from your average person on the street that comes in and says, I keep hearing about this, what is it? That's what we got when the first PCs came out. People came to the library and they said, "What can you show me how to use this?" The first ebook readers, the first iPhones. We still get these things where people are coming in saying, "I'm familiar with this technology, I've heard about it, I don't know how to use it." So it's the library's role to kind of connect them to the resources to help them use it. Oh, look at that beautiful portico right in the middle of the central library. I have spoken with most of you about this project, Central Library renovation project. The building is co-owned by Charlottesville and Albemarle, last fully renovated in 1981. The city has done the majority of the work and project management on upkeeping the building with funds provided by Albemarle County for their half of it, but the city does the lion's share of the work in terms of the project management. There's a new chiller in the building. There are renovated ADA restrooms, which actually happened during COVID. It was kind of one silver lining there. But the building is desperately in need of a facelift. It needs to be able to have space to match modern library usage. There's degrading infrastructure. There are safety and security issues that need to be addressed. So the Friends of the Library commissioned a design study in 2015. Went around to the city and the county at that point. And didn't get a lot of movement. There was a lot of conversation about it. A working group was commissioned in 23 that really went to talk to each individual elected official and staff to talk about what would need to happen. And we were able to kind of get the city and the county to align a vision for CIP, which would include architecture and engineering work scheduled for fiscal year 27, meaning starting next summer, hopefully, because it should take a while. So that means that you'll see me probably this fall to remind you that this is a commitment that the county and JMRL is interested in pursuing with the city, and they'll see me as well saying the same thing. Full construction then in fiscal year 29, I believe, so 3 years later. So there's a long way to go in this project, but I'm glad to see both the city and the county looking at it together about what do we need to do here. There's compounded value there. Every Charlottesville dollar is matched by an Albemarle dollar, and the Friends of the Library are prepared for the scale of fundraising that we expect this project will take. So the main concerns are modernizing systems, plumbing, electrical, security, as I mentioned, providing a 21st century experience. And over 150,000 people came through the doors of that building last fiscal year. So there are 2,500 groups that use that meeting. As we're thinking about this upcoming 50th anniversary of the downtown mall, 150,000 people walk through the door there. So, and some repeat users, I'm sure. We see some of the same folks every day, but still, it's a vibrant part of downtown Charlottesville that brings people to the area. And I think a renovation is really going to shine a light on what the Charlottesville area has to offer and bring people in to use that resource. So just need to keep up with the times. We're going to need council support for this, and you'll hear more from me and from the library board moving forward. So if you haven't been to the library lately, come see us. This week at Central, there are 2 author programs. Author Rachel Kessler-Palm talking about her book, The Badass Women of Charlottesville, tomorrow night at 5:30. Pulitzer Prize finalist Deborah Baker discussing her book, Charlottesville, An American Story, on Saturday at 2 o'clock this week. You've probably heard the news that Bruce Holsinger, a local author, his newest title is the Oprah Book Club novel, and he's coming to the Central Library in September to talk about that as well. So a lot of activity there. If you can't make any of those, head on over to Gordon Avenue on Wednesday night at 6 to join tea tasting, explore the rainbow of teas, which I'm looking forward to. Or head to Northside tomorrow to learn about navigating Medicare with confidence in partnership with JABA. Those are just a few of the things happening this week at your library, so check jmrl.org to hear more. And I'd love to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you so much. That was a
welcome.
lot of information. Thank you so much. I learned a lot about our library system. So we're really short on time because we have another presentation. We've got about 15 minutes, but I want to give us all opportunity to ask questions or comments. Lord, I'll start with you, sir.
I would just make a comment that one night last week, the Democratic Party was having a meeting on one side of the hallway and the Republican Party was having a meeting on the other side of the hallway. So lots of usage of the facility.
Very much so.
Yeah, and I'm just confirming, Sam, my recollection is that the CIP project is definitely programmed in for a couple years from now.
29.
And you and the county have been working to make sure we're aligned, so I think that's going to be okay.
Looking forward to it.
Natalie?
I have toured the library with you and got to see the spaces in the backstage area, the jail cell that holds books and everything. So thank you again for
You're welcome. Anytime.
that tour and for this great presentation today. I don't have any questions, but I did want to point out the quote that you mentioned where the person said that this is their third space. That's super important because it's one of the few third spaces that is air-conditioned and free. We've heard from the community about how they like to be on the downtown mall, but there's not enough seating, and so they feel like they have to pay for something in order to get a chair. But the library provides that without having to pay, and then you can have access to all these wonderful programs and books as well. So I know that's something we can do better about creating third spaces and making them more accessible for people, but supporting the library is one of the key things that we do in that front too. So it's hard to not be stoked about library things. So
I agree.
thank you for your presentation.
Michael?
Yeah, I think as others and you had stated, not just the access to information, but as a public space where people from all economic classes can come together and interact without needing to spend money, is a really important community resource and speaks to the power of publicly owned and funded spaces and institutions. I feel like if we didn't already have libraries, they probably would be created now with some bizarre public-private partnership, and your buildings would have been sold off by a private equity firm by now. But all of that to say, 2 questions. At this point, the impacts of changes in federal funding, you're only anticipating potentially losing access to databases that the state funding supported. Is that accurate?
Correct at this point.
And then it sounds like it'll be 1 or 2 years before we actually know the full cost of the renovation. So we have placeholders, but we can anticipate that number could very well change.
Yes, so I mentioned a design study from 2015, and that was the cost estimation that JMRL was using in resubmitting this project every year with a 10% inflationary escalator. I brought those numbers back to that architecture group 2 years ago, and they confirmed we were in pretty good shape. But yes, cost of construction projects, and you look at other local construction projects, I think we'll know much more once the architecture and engineering project is done.
Right. And I think we are, but we'll just be in a place of anticipating, we're not locked in. But thank you.
Thank you.
David, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
have a
you.
good evening.
The next item we're going to hear from is strategic outcome areas on economic prosperity. Ms. Marshall?
Thank you all. I'm gonna grab the clicker. All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council,
Good
City
afternoon.
Manager Sanders, and members of the public. I am going to speed through a presentation on the economic prosperity update for the city. So just as a reminder, the City Council has determined that economic prosperity is one of its strategic goals, thinking through what it means to ensure that residents not just survive, but that they thrive. So I wanted to take a moment to remind you all a little bit of some city-led initiatives and city-led funding that already exists. So specifically, again, this slide is just a reminder of existing programs that the city leads. It's meant to be busy to show you all how much we already do. Those city-led initiatives can work to help people stay in their homes from the Commissioner of Revenue, access financial support to remain in their rental units with human services, and help people afford heat and cool their homes from utilities. They allow community members to use our transit system for free, for teens to have paid internships to expand their resumes and to gain employment and get resume help from our downtown job center, as well as to gain the support to re-enter our community from being justice involved with our Home to Hope program. This work keeps with our use of the social determinants of health, as well as a way to ground our work to being fair and just while serving the whole community. The city also works to invest in our partners to help provide that economic prosperity opportunities to the community throughout the area of affordable housing, nonprofit programming, and supportive services, as well as direct sponsorship of key program opportunities that impact financial mobility. This shows that prosperity is not just in economic development, but also social equity in action. However, speaking of my friends in economic development, the team there works diligently to ensure that many of the key focuses established within their own strategic plan lead with economic prosperity in mind. They do this through supporting intentional and innovative growth, creating pathways for opportunity, and ensuring access to equitable entrepreneurship. We'll touch on some of their successes and successful programs that help our community continue to achieve the Council's strategic goal for economic prosperity. This work can include supporting companies like Luna Labs, General Atomics, and Duranol, which have all brought new jobs, significant capital to the community. Programs like CBIL Match help bring in additional employment, investment, and increase wages to our community. And the Business Visitation Program ensures that leaders of businesses in any size are heard from and their needs are worked towards. The office provides key workforce programming like their Growing Opportunity or Go Cook, Go Solar, and Ready to Work program, which provide training and job readiness. Further, programs like Go Hire incentivize employers to bring city residents into living wage work, and Coffee and Conversations help job seekers feel connected and part of the community. The team also deserves some kudos, along with Chef Antoine of Culinary Concepts AB for pioneering the Go Cook or Growing Opportunity Cook program that's receiving statewide recognition this fall. And then we can see a focus on entrepreneurship come to life through their partnership with Beacon Kitchen, as well as the Go Startup course, which also serve to take the lead in supporting small businesses, minority-owned and led businesses, as well as women-owned and led businesses. And adding in the work of critical resource directories, the city is supporting entrepreneurship, which for many is a wonderful access point to increasing their economic mobility and opportunity. Taken together, these efforts to prepare residents, attract investment, and lower barriers to participation. But even with these programs, some challenges remain. Too many families in Charlottesville are caught in what we call the muddy middle, earning too much to qualify for many forms of assistance, but not nearly enough to keep up with the rising cost of living. To put this challenge into a perspective, the average rent in Charlottesville, according to apartments.com, is now more than $1,700 a month. That means a household would need to earn nearly $69,000 a year just to meet standard affordability guidelines. And when we look across our rental market, only about a quarter of all rentals fall in between the $700 to $1,500 range, while 40% cost more than $2,000 a month. These numbers show just how limited affordable options are and why so many families are caught in the muddy middle. But if it takes $7,000 a year just to afford average rent in Charlottesville, that leaves more than 4,000 households who simply don't earn enough to make that possible. The good news is that this is exactly why we're focusing on economic mobility, so that more families can find stability, access better opportunities, and move closer to being able to afford to live and thrive right here in our community. Council's given us a clear vision that Charlottesville should be a place where everyone has the chance to thrive. Yet today, more than 5,500 households in our community are not thriving. Many of them are part of the ALICE population, asset limited, income constrained, but employed. These are working households that continue to access our community every day, contribute to our community every day, but too often lack access to the supports and resources they need to achieve stability. And that gap is exactly what our economic mobility and equity work is designed to address. In Charlottesville, about 30% of our households fall into ALICE category. These are working families that are doing everything right, but still struggling to make ends meet. For these households, it takes nearly $70,000 a year just to cover the basics and to keep up with average rent. That reality shows why many families find themselves stretched even when they're employed full-time. What this really means is that more than 52% of households in Charlottesville, over 9,500 families, are at or below the ALICE threshold. And these families are surviving, but not truly thriving. And too many can't make ends meet for even a basic need like housing. That reality forces impossible choices, deciding whether to pay rent or pay for childcare, to cover food or medicine. And many of these families do not qualify for traditional safety net programs. But this is exactly why our national partnerships matter, because they give us new tools, resources, and strategies to close the gaps and help more families move from surviving to thriving. To truly support economic mobility and opportunity to the 9,584 households in Charlottesville who are at or below ALICE, we've engaged in 3 national initiatives since 2024. These competitive opportunities give the city staff a chance to bring forward data-driven, evidence-based, and person-centered strategies. And they allow us to explore new ways of helping families move from simply surviving to thriving. In 2024, Charlottesville was honored to be selected as one of just 15 local governments nationwide for the ICMA Economic Mobility and Opportunity Peer Learning Cohort. The first question that our team asked was simple but powerful. What's missing in Charlottesville that prevents our residents from moving up the economic ladder, even when opportunities exist? And as we explored that question, we realized we didn't quite have the data we needed to fully answer it. So our project focused in on filling that gap and finding that data. With support from my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Engel, and the talent of our UVA master's student, Mr. Anthony Moderna, we conducted a service gap analysis where we asked both financial partners and nonprofit partners who work every day with our human services and equity programs, what do you see? So a couple interesting findings for you all quickly. Out of our financial partners, 100% of them indicated that they believe financial insecurity had increased in the city of Charlottesville. And their reasoning include inflation, housing prices, and lack of savings. So remember, these are our banker friends. 75% of respondents did not believe adequate accessible services existed for individuals who earn more than 50% median family income. For our nonprofits, 76% of them, so they were slightly more optimistic, believe that financial insecurity has increased in Charlottesville. And their reasons were that their clients were leaving to try to find economic mobility and opportunity. They couldn't afford housing and food and secure employment that meets their costs, and working with cuts and reductions in eligibility of critical benefits. Some top factors they identified as contributing to financial insecurity includes cost of housing, generational poverty, lack of paying jobs, poor medical and mental health, as well as simply being older. And our nonprofits found that some factors causing or sustaining economic immobility included childcare access, systemic bias and racism, lack of access to medical and mental health care, and lack of early childhood education. So we took this data and moved into our next national program, the National League of Cities Southern Cities Economic Initiative, where Charlottesville was selected this year as one of 20 southern communities alongside our colleagues in Harrisonburg. For this initiative, we proposed a project called Building Economic Prosperity and Inclusion Through Access to Quality Childcare. We designed it in direct response to feedback from our nonprofit partners. The goal is to address the shortage of affordable, high-quality childcare by also tackling its greatest hurdle, a lack of stable workforce. The challenge is clear. Projects like PHA's Kindlewood need more than a dozen new instructors just to open their classrooms. Families may qualify for subsidized slots, but without teachers, that classroom stays empty. And since the city has not traditionally led efforts in early learning, we're especially excited to partner with experts at the United Way Greater Charlottesville and their Ready Regions team. Together, we see this as a chance to test our new model and move the needle on Council's economic prosperity goals. Our hope is that this childcare workforce pipeline will create impact in 3 ways. Career pathways, so training community members as classroom leaders or future teachers. Expanded access, opening more early learning classrooms so parents can return to work or advance in their jobs. And early success for children, giving our youngest residents the strong start they need, knowing that by 3rd grade, children shift from learning to read to reading to learn. And this initiative is about building both family stability and community resilience, and we're hopeful that it will serve as a foundation for long-term prosperity. For this particular program, we are in the first phase where we're building a business plan. Should that plan be accepted, there may be some additional investments and we'll test it out. But right now, you'll notice there's no data slide next. Finally, we're really excited to be able to announce our acceptance into the ICMA Economic Mobility and Opportunity Special Assistance Program, or ICMA EMO-SA, because that's a whole lot of words. And we were accepted into that program just this month. This program is a 2-year opportunity supported through funding from the Gates Foundation to have an executive level leader here thinking through how we can plan to do more work for economic prosperity, specifically tasked by ICMA to lead a community-engaged co-design process during their 2-year tenure, and then to help implement or design policy or programs that work for our needs and that match what we hear from the community. This one, again, is extraordinarily brand new. In August, they had their first office hours today. You get to pick one from this week. So more information will be forthcoming, and we are very excited to be in this program with 16 other communities, including our colleagues in Staunton. So as we look ahead, our focus remains on the residents most at risk, our ALICE households and those living in poverty. With support from ICMA and National League of Cities, we'll continue to strengthen strategies around childcare, financial empowerment, housing stability, and workforce development to suggest to our city manager who will bring what he believes works best to you all. What gives me the most hope is that we're not starting from scratch. Again, Charlottesville already has strong programs in place, and now with these national partnerships, we're bringing in new resources, expertise, and momentum. By weaving our local investments together with national best practices and grounding it all in social determinants of health framework, we're positioning Charlottesville not just to grow, but to grow in a way that is fair, that is just, and sustainable for all of our residents. And with that, I went 1 minute over.
Man, thank you so much. Brian?
Yeah, I really appreciated that because it shows, you know, all the different things that we're working on, but the goal isn't just necessarily to give people money, although that might what it actually looks like in practice perhaps, but the goal is to help people prosper and grow and have something that's self-sustaining, and all of the things that the initiatives that you just showed us, I think, support that. And I also really appreciate the initiative that you and others in city staff have taken to go after these programs with, you know, your various professional organizations. I think that that'll bring a lot of new thinking and fresh blood. So thank you.
No?
I was curious about the partnerships that we were talking about at the end. Are these new things that now we can apply for, or were they something that existed that before that we didn't apply for?
Sure. So it depends a little bit on the program. So both ICMA programs, the one that Chris and I did, it is the second class, and I believe they're on their third now, so still pretty shiny. The ICMA Economic Mobility and Opportunity Special Assistant, this is the first time they have tried something like this. So we're in with the inaugural class. The Southern Cities Initiative has had several administrations, but it is about a 1.5 to 2 year long program. So you don't see a lot of churn in that, but outside of our current cohort that has ourselves in Harrisonburg, the only other Virginia community to have gone through it before us is Danville, Virginia.
Okay, great. The reason why I was asking is I was trying to figure out, like, are we now in a better position to take advantage of these than we have been in the past, or were they probably that plus the fact that they're new? But it's great that we are going out and seeking these opportunities in a way that I don't think we've done before. So, thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, I appreciate the update in the new initiative. Obviously, as you highlighted, the city already does, a tremendous amount of things that do make a positive impact. You highlighted it though, and, it's reflected in the community survey as just one data point that, the number of people who report thinking that there's adequate economic mobility in Charlottesville is like 10%. And we see that in data about the wealth gap, economic mobility, that we're very, very far away from actually having true economic mobility in Charlottesville. And, this presentation just made me think, I think one of the things the city still is lacking that really needs to happen is following the model some cities have moved towards of having a real strategy of community wealth building that's not just having scattershot programs, but thinking about how does this all connect systemically to create more systemic change. And I think, the downtown mall was created with a ton of intentionality. There was purchases of land. There were partnerships to get things like live arts and the pavilion. If we're really going to create a black business district in Charlottesville, it will require that level of intentionality for wealth building at that level, or to build a pipeline of training to enter areas of employment that are having rising wages and rising demand. So it's not counter to your presentation at all, but I think we still need to get to a place where we're thinking and planning much more systemically if we're really going to change the wealth gap. Because as you highlighted, the average black family in Charlottesville is at 50% of area median income. So a lot of things we discussed aren't even reaching the average black family in Charlottesville. How do we change that?
One of the things that we know, at least we think we know, let me put it that way, is that a lot of the better paying jobs that are coming to Charlottesville are coming in ways that we end up hiring people from out of the area to come live here. In other words, they don't actually manifest themselves in opportunities for current residents to move up. And that touches on the economic mobility issue that was referenced before. Is there a way that we can or should be thinking about how we go about economic development and economic prosperity in general that moves better in that direction?
And I think that's what I appreciate about having the opportunity to highlight the work that the Office of Economic Development is doing. That is based in their strategic plan, and it's extremely intentional. So for example, with their GO programming, they really are looking to help train people in jobs that have a living wage. And so any of the programs that they're running, minus something like a Go Startup, where you might start off maybe, not making that living wage, but moving forward, is really focused in on that. And I think that there are opportunities within their existing work and within relationships that the city manager is establishing with PVCC as well as the university to see how we can continue to move people up and forward towards the goals that they wish to reach. And I will share that from the information that we got in that survey, as well as some data that's been shared with me, having access to quality early childhood care is really important because that would allow a caregiver to go to school, to go to class, depending on if you ever had a second shift opportunity for care or even a third shift. That could allow someone to take a shift differential, maybe move up in some programming, but also here within the city we're thinking about that. I know our Public Works team has looked at journeyman programs, apprenticeship programs to get people into those skilled trades that are needed. As you all hear often from the city manager, we're waiting to do a project, for example, because we need to wait to get the right construction crew, the right team here. So that's something that we can do in-house, but I think that that is definitely something that Chris's team is thinking about with intentionality and sharing, and some of this work will help us to think about that as well.
Thank you.
Would that involve like K-Tech?
Yes, it can involve K-Tech as well, absolutely. And so I know that they're still continuing to define where they want to go, but I know that, there was nursing there's been automotive there, being married to an automotive mechanic. I know I can't fix my car, and so those are all still really wonderful careers for people who want to use their hands and maybe choose not to go to college. I think also sometimes we talk about trades as you don't have a choice. You do. There are plenty of people who choose to go into trades who would have been excellent college students, and there are plenty of people who choose to go in trades because they simply don't want that experience. So, absolutely.
Thanks.
So, lots to talk about, but we really have to move on. I'm so sorry. So we're going to go into closed session. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, this is a really long motion. So motion for city council closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code. I move that the city council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. 1, pursuant to Virginia Code section 2.2-3711A1 for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to the following boards and commissions: Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund Committee, Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee, Community Development Block Grant and Home Task Force, Housing Advisory Committee, John Advisory Committee, Jefferson Madison Regional Library Board, Local Building Code Board of Appeals, Minority Business Commission, Personnel Appeals Board, Piedmont Family YMCA Board of Directors, Planning Commission, Police Civilian Oversight Board, Retirement Commission, Sister Cities Commission, Social Services Advisory Board, SPCA Board of Directors, Towing Advisory Board, Tree Commission, Vendor Appeals Board, and Youth Council.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we're in
Yes.
it passes 5-0. We'll go into closed session. We'll be back about 6:30. Thank you.